Everyone, welcome back to the channel. That sexy little nugget that you're looking at on screen, that's Serum 2, which I cannot believe I'm saying. Not the cringy, sexy little nugget joke. That's kind of on brand for me. Who are we kidding? Serum 2 is here, guys, which is crazy. It's blowing my mind. So it's as much of a surprise to me as it probably was to you. I had no idea this was coming. I got Beyonce just like everyone else did. Steve Duda was like, oh, we're just going to drop this. There was no long lead marketing. It was just, here one day, which I think is great. I think it makes it seem like it's trying to stand on the merits of its new content, its new features, the update itself, as opposed to a hype train with, little trailer videos and that type of stuff. So that has been cool to see how that's shaken out. And I think music producers are responding well to it. So first things first, it's a free update. So if you have Serum 1, you get this for free. Earlier in the day, there was a little tip section on the page. I didn't see that. The site's been kind of crashing from server overload because everyone in the world's like, oh my God, Serum 2. So, but yeah, if that tip thing remains and you could send a tip to Duda and Exfer, do that because this amount of content for free is absolutely brilliant. So let's dive into it and get going. So the first thing I want to do is just go over these pages up here at the top. So one thing that Serum 2 just does extremely well is it has a ton of new features, but it still feels like Serum. You're not going to be hard pressed to be like, oh, I need to tweak this filter. I need to do this thing that I've done 100 times to get this type of preset or something to work in my track. It's just going to happen for you. Sure, there'll be the new features that you need to learn how to integrate, and that'll take some time, but it still feels like Serum. For those of you who might remember the Massive X rollout, right? Massive to Massive X, they don't feel like the same synth. We'll look at them on screen here real quick. Totally different. If you use Massive, you are not immediately comfortable working in Massive X. And yeah, it seems like they just stuck Massive on for a marketing move, and this actually still feels like Serum. So, all right, so that being said, let's dive into what I think are the 16 best new features in Serum 2 that you should definitely know about. So Serum 1 was a 2 oscillator synth with a sub and a noise, so 4 total oscillators. This has 5 total oscillators. You have your sub over on the left, just like you did before. The noise is moved. It's over on the right. That's one of the only things that really moved. Then we have our 3 primary oscillators. So we have 3 primary oscillators now instead of 2, A, B, and C. Now, each of the primary oscillators can be one of 5 synthesis modes or types. Of course, we have wavetable, then we have multisample, sample, granular, and spectral. The sheer amount of sounds you can coax out of Serum 2 just far surpasses what Serum 1 was capable of because of these 5 different modes. Case in point, let's go to the factory and we'll check out one of the multi-samples here. We'll go to guitar. Sure, 100 Nights in Morocco. Like that preset name, let's play it. You just could not get that exact sound with that much detail in Serum 1. Now, not only is it multi-sample, we can see that we have multi-sample with multiple velocity layers, right? This right here, this first one, the Ron Rocco, that's just single velocity multi-sample. But this one right here, the oud, that's multi-velocity. Same with the guitar harmonics. So that's epic. That's a huge change. These are all SFZ files. If you don't know how to work with SFZ, I could make a video for that in the future. We have factory content. So there's tons of content here. Winds, synth, strings, keys, plucks, pretty much it's all here. Let's go and we'll check out one more. Let's go to the piano here and let's do emotional upright. Let's turn on the granular layers. So good segue. We have multi-sample plus granular together. Palettes you could not get in Serum 1. Yeah, so if you guys have never used a granular synth or a granular synth engine, like Pigments has one, for instance. I don't want to turn this into a tutorial about granular synthesis, but basically it takes an audio sample. So we are loading up audio samples, whether it's from the factory content included in Serum 2, or you can drag and drop your own. Like we'll take this Tascam Marimba and drag this guy in and play it. Right. Same concept. So basically what it's doing is it's taking tiny little segments, it's breaking down the audio, taking tiny little pieces or segments of it, and those are called grains, hence granular. And then it recombines them in various ways to create these new textures, these new palettes, and these new sounds. So grains are usually quite short, and you can usually determine with the engine how quickly you're scanning through it, the density of how many grains you're having, and the length. You can see that it's working its way through the sample, and now it's going to loop based on this forward loop selection. Let's do a reverse loop here. And let's turn the length down here. Now it's going to stop partway through the sample, and we're going to get this kind of jittery movement. Flume loves this shit. Now, the really cool thing about having granular synthesis, I think, in Serum is just the sheer ease and flexibility of modulating your basically where it's scanning, right? So we can just click this, make this bipolar. Let's check out one of the other modes here. We're going to go down to, let's go to sample. And you'll notice that when I switch these modes, any of the sample-based modes, so sample, granular, and spectral, it keeps the same sample in. And that holds true even if you drag in your own. So right now I just dragged in a short Tascam marimba sample. And this is in sample mode. So here, I'll reset this so you can see here this a little bit better. I'll do an it preset. And we're going to take this load sample, drag it in. Now, if I change this to one of the other sample modes, like if we change this to granular, it keeps that sample in, which I think is super cool. So you can audition it across the different modes. Let's go and choose spectral. And I'm going to choose a different sample here. That's a little too short to check out the spectral. We're going to do this double tension. So if you guys don't know what spectral synthesis is, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it in this video. It's outside the scope, but it's a form of synthesis where you're basically feeding it a sample. So you're either going to load up a sample in the factory, right, we just did, or you're going to drag and drop one in. And what it does is it analyzes the sample, and then it starts to manipulate the frequency spectrum of the sound. It breaks it down into these tiny little spectral harmonics, and you can usually play around with how it does that. That's essentially the gist of it. So in Serum, you have these different playback modes, like you just saw in the couple other, the other sample-based engines. So this here is a forward loop. We'll do reverse loop again. Right, so that makes sense. We can change where that loop happens. We can change our start point as well. Now, what I really like about spectral engines and synths like Pigments and now in Serum too, is that when you start to get these reverse loops going and you play chords spaced out across multiple octave range, the reverse section is always in time. So check this out. If I play a C minor chord, spaced out across a couple octaves, hear how that's in time as it goes through the reverse section of the loop. Now, if I change this to sample, it'll keep the same sample. We have the same reverse loop, and I've played the same chord. You get these conflicting times, right? Because this sample is playing back faster, which could be a cool effect. Don't get me wrong. You could probably modulate that, do some interesting things in Serum, but that's one of the cool things about spectral and granular synths is that those will all be in time. And you can get these nice rhythmic pumping effects occurring. Now, if we change this to manual, I think we can, we can change where we essentially start breaking the samples down from. So super cool, kind of a flume vibe, right? Kind of like time stretched, frozen in time as well. And we can apply warp modes to this as well. We have spectral warp, which is only available in the spectral mode. You will not see spectral warp in some of the other engines. So if I go to wavetable, we go here, you won't see spectral warp there. It's just not there. So we have all these new warp modes specifically designed for the spectral engine, which is absolutely nuts. Smear is super cool. If you modulate that with let's do one of the Chaos Lorenz. And literally just like that, we have a riser. So yeah, the spectral mode is, I love it. I'm going to be playing with that a lot. All right, so the second feature I think you should know about in Serum 2 is there's a lot of filters. More importantly, there are 2 filters on the main page. So you can set up true parallel and series routing, which you just could not do in Serum 1. So that's kind of huge. Now, on top of that, you also have access to a boatload of filters in the back end. So, or in the effects, I should say, not the back end. We have the main effects and our two buses. You'll see on this preset, I have a filter on the bus, on bus 2, and I have more than one filter active. I have 3 on my main effects. So that's a total of 3, 4, 5, 6 filters on this sound. Let's check it out. So a lot of filtering happening, and I did it to this extreme just to see what would happen mainly for the video and just to show you guys, hey, filtering is incredibly flexible now in Serum 2. So let's go to our effects tab here and let's just turn some of these off, these other filters. And I want to kind of quickly investigate what's going on exactly with this 2 filter setup on the main page, because that's probably the most important addition to the filtering landscape. So we have these 2 sounds, or 2 oscillators. We have filter 1 is a low pass filter, filter 2 is a reverb filter. So oscillator A is, if we go to the mix tab, going all the way into filter 1. Right. Now oscillator B is going into filter 2. Now, not all the way, it also is hitting filter 1 and a little bit of the reverb filters coming through. So if I turn on filter 1 with that, right? That's what you just could not achieve in the first Serum 1. You could not get part of the signal to go to that second filter. It'd have to go to all of it in the effects rack. So pretty simple sound, but it does showcase what you can do with the different filters. Now, the third thing we're going to be looking at is the new filter modes. So it's not just having all these different filters, we also have new modes, and let's check out a couple of them here. So if we go to the filter dropdown, S2 filters. First up is WSP. I believe this is a WASP style filter, so kind of it has a buzz to it is a good way to describe it. Let's turn up the resonance a little. Turn on one oscillator for now. That's a great sounding filter. So number 4 is this smooth interpolation option in the wavetable editor. So we have a wavetable with just 3 cycles here, and it'll be hard stops in between each one. You can right click and select smooth interpolation, and now you get nice fluid movement between each of the 3 cycles. In Serum 1, what you would have had to have done is you would have had to actually go to the wavetable editor. You would have basically destructively edited the wavetable edit with a morph, either spectral or crossfade, to get that. So I think that's a pretty cool feature to have in a non-destructive manner right there on the actual wavetable engine on the front page. Moving on to feature number 5, there's now multiple warp modes per engine per oscillator. So if we load up the wavetable engine or mode, you'll see that we have 2 warp modes. So we have a couple new options as well. So we have distortion inside of each, all the distortion effects are now warp modes, which is crazy cool. I've always wanted this in Serum. Check this out. For basses, for leads, this is going to be awesome. Now it's a per voice distortion, so it's gonna be cleaner with chord sounds as well. So far, I'm loving that. Now that's just one of the warp modes, right? We also have the same warp modes available in the wavetable engine on Warp 2. So having 2 warp modes brings it more in line with what Vital had. Vital has 2 warp modes per oscillator as well, but not as many as Serum 2 has. Now, if I change it to another mode here, we also have warp modes in multisample and sample as well. We just don't have some of the warp modes, right? We have distortion, filter, FM, phase distortion, which is new, AM, amplitude modulation, ring modulation. We just don't have some of the odd even and the like the alternating warps, right? These ones right here where they're called the alt warp. So that can't happen on a sample, obviously, be impossible to pull off. So if we go to the granular engine, you actually do have warps. You just click this button and now you have 2 warp modes per granular, which is crazy. So much power under the hood. All right, so the sixth feature is the mixer page. So this is the fifth page that's added. We have oscillator, mix, matrix, and global. That's the same from the first version, the first Serum, but now we have this mix tab. So this is great for tweaking presets. Honestly, it gives you a bird's eye view, kind of like a DAW-esque look at what's going on in the preset, and it makes it really easy, I think, to get sounds to fit better in a mix quicker. So if you're a preset surfer, this is going to be great news for you. So in the mix tab, you can choose for each of the oscillators, you have a routing option now. So in the first version of Serum, we could only choose like direct out for the sub, right? And maybe the noise in a later update. Now we can say, hey, I want this oscillator to go to the filters. I don't want this oscillator to go to the filter. I just want to go to main out, which will hit the main effects. Or I don't want it to go, I want to go direct out, which we now have for each of the oscillators, which is huge. Just total flexibility. You can also control, which we've already touched on, how much of each filter the sound goes to in the main filters on the oscillator page. We also have our bus controls, which is an excellent segue into number 7. We have effects buses. So let's say with this 4 oscillator sound, we have oscillator A, B, C, and noise. I want to add some effects to just this first oscillator, and I don't want it to hit other effects, right? So let's go to my effects chain. I'm going to go to bus 1. We already have a bunch of effects here on this preset on the main effects, right? So let's go to bus 1. We're just going to choose a random preset just to make this quicker. We're going to do distorted. Let's do acid distorted delay. All right, so you can see here, bus 1. We're going to turn this up. So here is bus 1, and now it's at 100%. And we are going to modulate that with this same LFO down here. This one, we're going to modulate the frequency. All right, so now if we go back to our mix tab and turn on oscillator B, you'll notice that that sound is not also routed to our effects bus. It's at 0%. So now we've sent just oscillator A to that new effects bus. If we play it all together. Moving on to number 8, the new FX BODE. This is, I think it's a kind of a frequency shifter. I don't know the history of it, but it sounds frequency shifter-esque to me. But you can really introduce some movement. It almost kind of creates like some dissonance. If you turn the range up in the direction, you kind of get this phasing effect. So I have the mix up quite high. Let's turn that down. Yeah, that's really cool. It's kind of almost like a tremolo rotary vibe. All right, so number 9, we have a lot of new reverb in Serum. We have a whole new reverb type, the convolve, which is an impulse response style reverb. So these load up audio files, impulse responses of physical spaces. We have some classic things in the factory. These L90s are lexicon, like classic lexicon, really classic lexicon style impulse response reverbs. Now, the thing I love about that, the pre-delay has the BPM select right there, which is awesome for have that level of control just within a synth. That's usually something you only get in like a, actual standalone reverb plugin. Now, you can actually load your own IRs. You can load your own IRs in the back end or your own impulse responses. So if you're a Logic user, you could try loading in some of the Space Designer impulse responses and see what you get. But yeah, those should work. It's just going to be audio files. FL, the factory ones are all FLAC. You can also use Wave, I believe. So that is really cool to have a whole new type of reverb inside of Serum. And then also the actual standard reverb in Serum, if we just go to reverb, it has a boatload of new modes. So we have plate, hall, vintage, nitrous, and basin. So hall and plate, those were in the first version of Serum. Vintage is new. Great sounding vintage reverb. Nitrous. The nitrous one is from my preliminary testing is good for like really ambient soundscape style stuff. You also have these sub modes in nitrous: space, marble, rectangle, hexagon, and box. So in total, it's probably about 7 to 8 new types or flavors of reverb in Serum 2, which is awesome. You can never have enough reverb in a synth, in my opinion. All right, moving on to number 10. This one is simple, but I absolutely love it. In the envelope section here, we can see that we can choose between BPM and MS. So having BPM sync on a envelope is really cool. So if you're trying to have a rhythmic release, a rhythmic attack, that is awesome to have. So for instance, let's say I wanted to have the attack kind of go up at a specific amount. So do, say, 16th note. Like let's say my kick, the tick of my kick or some type of percussive element in my mix was about a 16th note long. It's really awesome to know, hey, at my current tempo, 120 beats per minute, that attack is just 1/16. So simple, but super useful feature. Number 11, the updated LFOs. So we have some new types of LFOs. Normal will be very similar to what you have all come to know and expect, where we have, you can create your own shapes like so, double click the dots. You can also do steps like this by selecting the straight line. You can do ramps, right? So that all makes perfect sense. That'll all be really familiar to anyone who's ever used Serum. Now, down here in this dropdown, that's normal. We also have path, and we have these chaos, Lorenz, and sample and hold. So in the first Serum, those were in the global tab, and they weren't actually like a part of the synth. So if you didn't get really deep into Serum sound design, you may not even know they were there. If we go to the settings page here, you'll see, let me go to the default skin. You'll see that we have Chaos 1, Chaos 2, and then you have sample and hold, right? So that's where those were at. Now they're actually a part of the greater LFO structure, which is pretty cool. So if we change this to Lorenz, I could look at this for days. It's just gorgeous. So we will modulate something. So you'll see in this preset, I was using this kind of chaos style wavetable to modulate some positions. So I'm just going to change that from normal to chaos Lorenz, and we'll just try and see what we get. Let's try the other one. Oh, that's nice. That's got like a binaural vibe. Yeah, it swirls around. Oh, that's nice. Okay, let's change the depth here on this. That's nice. That's smooth. Yeah, so those are the new modes. And then the last mode we'll check out real quick, and we'll just do this on the default preset so you can hear it, which I really love, is the path, and start to draw out different shapes, basically. And you can get some really interesting movement with this. Right? I mean, that's not even like a completed shape, and then you can use this to actually complete it. So I'm not sure if this is... if you can get this to be binaural, I haven't figured that out yet. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments. I'm going to try this on the pan real quick and see if it's binaural. Yeah, getting a circle would be hard to do with the closest thing you'd be able to do with that would be like a sine wave, but that's going to have a different sound. All right, the 12th feature you have to check out is this thing down at the bottom left called Clip. No, it's not a clipper. It's a MIDI clip. MIDI, it's basically a DAW. It's nuts. If you've ever used Exit for Records Cthulhu, this will make a lot of sense. If you haven't, you're going to be like, what is this? It's basically MIDI triggering in Serum. I did not have this on my bingo card that this would be a part of Serum 2. So I'll quickly run through some of the features. This could be an entire video in its own right. So let's, just for kicks and giggles, let's go load up one of the drum kits, which will automatically load in one of the sequences for the drums. I mean... yeah, it's drums, right? But it's drums coming from Serum, which is just pretty crazy. If we go to the oscillator, we can see we're using a Multisample 808 kit. But if we go back to the clip, we can see that we have all these different slots with these different beats, and we can click each one and play them. Now, each slot can be assigned to a different key, and then you can trigger that via MIDI or your keyboard. So it works a lot like Cthulhu. Now, it doesn't just work with just drums, it also works with melodic and chord-based material as well. So I'm gonna paste in a preset, and we're gonna load up one of these factory presets. There's not a lot of them, but we'll do the Duda chords. And this was actually, I think these are actually from Cthulhu, I wanna say, or some of them. So these are just whole chord progressions. And yeah, so let's stop on that. And you can actually drag and drop your own MIDI in. So we'll drag this in, and now we have this. And let's say you really liked the MIDI coming from Serum, you can drag that into your DAW as well and then edit it that way. Just make sure you turn off the clip because it might trigger twice, depending on how you have that set up. You can also record stuff directly into the clip. Let's delete everything that's here, and we will hit record and then hit play. Now, I didn't line it up very well, but you get the idea. It records in the actual whatever you're passing through, whether that's coming from your DAW transport or your keyboard. Now, the other use you could do for this would be like triggering single chords, kind of for house music or stabs, right? So if we go to chords, go to Neo chords, hit this. Right, you could set up some chords to basically create your kind of house stabs. And you can rearrange these if you want, and then assign them to the key that you want to trigger them. So that's the clip in a nutshell, and that's a good segue into the 13th feature of Serum 2. You gotta check out the arpeggiator. So Serum has never had a proper arp. To do arpeggiate or create arpeggiated patterns in the first version of Serum, what you kind of had to do was you just kind of had to fake it. So if I go to this preset here, we'll go to the oscillator. We'll look at our LFO. So let me play this for you. So this is a sequence / arp, right? We got a bass line and the melody on top. Basically what you do is you penciled in with the shape here, the bass line, this is the bass line, and then this is the melody, and they have to correspond to the right position in this grid to make the right note, and then you modulate the pitch. It was never that great to do. It was never easy. And now though, with the ARP, we have basically full authority to do whatever we want. We have these different shapes. We can create our own pattern. The pencil tool, you can create your own pattern, create your own length, super flexible. We also have all these other different shapes, these patterns, up, down. I really like these thumbs up. Like I'll play these with a bass here. I like if I do like a running bass, check this out. Turn that on and then do pinky up. That is pretty cool. We'll turn that down to an 1/8. Let's do pinky UD. Yeah, so that's just something you can just quickly add to a bunch of presets you already have, or presets you're just slightly tweaking. And you're off and running. Now, there's far too much content for me to cover here in the arpeggiator. I might do another video just covering everything in the ARP, but you guys get the idea. Check out the arpeggiator. All right, the 14th thing we need to look at here is just to the right of the ARP. We have these new features on the keyboard. We can set a key, which is great for your ARP and your clip. If you want to set that to a key, that's how you do it. But we also have a scale lock, which is awesome. So if I play, let me paste that preset in again. So if I play something like in C minor here. All right, and I don't want to play it in C minor, but I need to play it in F sharp minor, but I'm not comfortable in it. I can select key. We'll do F sharp, and we'll select minor. And now when I play these notes, I'm still playing C minor shapes on my keyboard. The 15th thing we'll be looking at is in the global tab. So this is similar to some features from Diva. It's the voice control. So what you can do is on certain voices, you can actually introduce pan, detune, cutoff. It really helps to make things sound more analog. Check this out. So we'll do 2-voice pan. And every time I hit a note, it's going to pan back and forth to the full amount of the pan because these are cranked all the way up and down. So if we change this to an 8-voice pan, check this out. You can really do some cool stuff with that, and it's just subtle, right? You can and that's just with pan. You can also do it with detune and cutoff and envelope, and yeah, it just kind of adds this nice analog vibe because analog synths aren't always perfect, and that's what this is trying to achieve, right? All right, and the 16th and final feature that I think you definitely need to check out in Serum 2 is the updated preset browser. There is a lot here, and it is a lot nicer. You have categories, ratings, tags, and it just seems a lot more, I guess, modern. Now, one cool thing that you can do here is you can actually preview the sounds. Check this out. So that's pretty nice. You can change the actual preview sound. This is a custom preview sound. The default ones are just kind of these blippy little ARPs. It doesn't ever help me determine like, oh, that's a cool preset for the sound. What I usually do, if synths allow me, I'll swap it out for one bass, one lead, one chord. And to do that, you can go to menu, show Serum, open Serum 2 presets folder. You want to go to clips and then just replace these. Make sure they're named the same thing. Save the originals if you want them, but then you can do whatever you want. And that's what I did with that third one, and that's why it is the chord. But yes, the preset browser is way nicer in Serum 2 than Serum 1. So guys, that sums up the video of 16 things you definitely need to check out in Serum 2. If I missed any features that you're super excited about, that you're like, hey, how did you possibly forget talking about this? Please post in the comments below. There's so much in this update. I'm sure I missed a lot of really cool things. I'd love to hear what you guys think about Serum 2. So by all means, post those comments. Let me know what's going on. As always, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.